quick dictation video for my higher level students. This is important because when your vocabulary grows, you begin to learn some words that have very special grammar associated with them. And here's a very good example. This list that you see here is going to be different in different books that you read and different teachers that you have, because these words don't all have the same kind of grammar rules, but there's one structure that they have in common. So these are verbs that have a special kateho rule with them. Insist, suggest. Those first three, recommend, insist, suggest, they're very common. They are often used incorrectly. Recommend, insist, suggest. And then there are other ones. Require, demand, request, prefer, ask, propose, ensure. All right? So here's the dictation. You'll see the rule once we do a few of these dictations, okay? I suggest that you study more. You study. I suggest that you study more. Here's another one. My mother insisted that I stay for dinner. Dinner. My, insist, dinner. My mother insist, kakuke, insisted. Stay. My mother insisted that I stay for dinner. Okay, here's what I want you to think about. Every time you see one of these verbs, recommend, insist, suggest, require, demand, request, prefer, ask, propose, ensure. Very, very common structure that goes with these is that, he, genke no doshi. When you hear one of these words, recommend, insist, suggest, require, demand, request, prefer, ask, propose, ensure, you're going to listen for later in the sentence, because probably you will hear a genke verb, a base form verb. For example, stay, stay. Or in our previous sentence, I suggest that you study more, study, genke, not stayed or studied. Right? It's going to be a base form verb. This is a special kateho. And it's kateho because if you think very carefully, my mother insisted that I stay for dinner. My mother insisted in the past, but stay for dinner. Whoops, I made a mistake. 4. But stay for dinner, is that something that happened in the past? We don't even know if I did stay for dinner. Didn't happen in the future. It's not happening right now. It's happening in your mother's mind. She insisted that I stay. That's why it's kateho, because it's in her mind. All right? It's a very special form of kateho. It goes with these verbs. So when you hear these verbs, you want to listen for a genke verb. It's very likely that it'll be in there. and you'll make many fewer mistakes. When you speak these verbs or write these verbs, you want to think about the possibility that you might have to use a base form verb. Case where you take all the stuff away from the verb and you just use the genke. Here's a case where genke is correct. Sometimes you'll see should in front of the verb, and it changes the meaning a little bit. It's not the same as my mother insisted that I should stay for dinner, and my mother insisted that I stay for dinner. Those have different meanings. When we have a lesson together, if you want to talk about what that difference is, I can talk with you about that. But just remember, the key thing is to remember that that verb is very likely going to be genke. So here's some more examples. My school rules require that I wear a uniform. My school rules require that I wear a uniform. Okay, uniform. My rules require. My rules require, my school rules. And I think it's my school's rules, right? My school's rules require uniform. A uniform. That I. どうしは? My school's rules require that I wear a uniform. W-E-A-R. Where. I prefer that my students be quiet when I'm speaking. Write the last word first, remember? That's how you do dictation. You have to write the last word first, because you can remember it most easily. I. Quiet. Students. Prefer. I prefer students. That my students. Quiet speaking. I am speaking. When. Quiet when I am speaking. I prefer that my students quiet when I'm speaking. I guarantee the more tests you take that are based on English, that have English in them, the more tests you take that test your English, more and more you are going to encounter this problem. I prefer that my students nantoka quiet when I'm speaking. Genke. Be. Right? That's the genke. I prefer that my students, that's the base form. I prefer that my students be quiet when I am speaking. All right? Hope that was useful.